Hi, everybody. When my instructor paused again, I considered a few further questions. If the patient offered no hope of substantial improvement, what was the point of our assistance? Why spend so much time on an insoluble case that held no potential for a reunion between the criminal and his victims in the near future?
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's very short,
Yeah,
but
okay.
I just wanted to say you to read these two paragraphs because I want to also tell people what we are looking at here. So we are studying the story of Fabrizio. Remember, Fabrizio was a man with brothers, and what happened was that when his father was about to die, Fabrizio's father gave him the family fortune, asking him to take care of his brothers. He took the fortune, but he never took care of his brothers, and he was actually directly and in some cases indirectly responsible for their financial derrocate and even for the loss of their lives. So we see now Fabrizio prostrated in bed, an individual who, for medical science, looks like a schizophrenic. But what he actually is suffering from is extreme remorse. He feels an immense amount of guilt for what he did to his brothers, for what he did to the entire family, to the entire fabric of his family, which was out of greed, out of ambition, unbridled ambition. And now he cannot extricate himself from this situation. He keeps reliving it. He keeps refeeling everything. He's always looking back. He now knows that he was responsible for one of his brother's death, for the financial ruin of the other ones. And there was a little bit of an idea that he tried to make amends, but it was already too late. In one case, the brother had already passed away. So now he is in this situation where guilt is consuming him from inside out. So he looks like he has Krish disease or something similar to it. But actually, as we discussed last time, when someone is, or that he isn't even schizophrenic, but what we see is that the disease or supposed disease is actually in the spiritual realm. His spirit, his soul is consumed by guilt, and he cannot pull himself out of this situation. So Andre Luiz is there with Brother Calderaro. Remember, Brother Calderaro is Andre Luiz's guide. And they are in the presence of Fabrizio. And once again, Fabrizio is an incarnate being. He has a physical body. Brother Calderaro and Andre Luiz do not. So Brother Calderaro and Andre Luiz are there. And Andre Luiz is asking, at least mentally, why should they be assisting this individual if he has no hopes of improving? Because Brother Calderaro just told Andre Luiz that, we didn't read this part, but just told that his situation now cannot be solved in this reincarnation process. One of his brothers has passed, two of his brothers has passed away, and his situation is not conducive to doing any to making any amends. So Andre Luiz is always the practical person. He sees still much more from the physical plane than actually from the spiritual plane, and this is why he is in training. There's nothing wrong about this, but it's interesting to see when we read the collection that as we go from book 1 to book 13, we see Andre Luiz moving from the man of action, the one who wants to jump and solve the problem right away, to
Mhm.
one who is going to be more intellectual, who is going to be more careful, and who's going to be a lot more on the action side rather than on the reaction side. But we are not at the end of the collection. So we still see in Andre Luiz this feeling or this attitude, behavior of just jumping into into the action and trying to solve it. So it's being practical about it, pragmatic. Well, why are we here then? This person is beyond hope. It's beyond help, at least now, from us, from the spiritual realm. And Brother Calderaro is going to tell us why they are there and why, despite the fact that there is no opportunity in this reincarnation process for Fabricio to make amends, they're still there with a purpose. And this purpose is a preparation for what is to come for Fabricio. Okay?
Okay. Calderaro didn't leave me without an answer. We are here, he explained thoughtfully, to provide him with a dignified death. Insanity will not set in completely. With our fraternal help, he'll discarnate before the total eclipse of his reason. And because I appeared startled, my esteemed friend added, Fabricio married a woman deserving of heavenly support. This sublime creature gave him 3 children to whom he dedicated himself nobly, preparing them for lofty social missions. They are at present 2 teachers and a doctor dedicated to high ideal of serving the collective good. Fabricio has no right to disturb his family, which was built in the shade of his material support, but educated without his despotic personality. For the service he has rendered to his wife and children, he is now receiving help from on high in the form of a transfer of residence through the imposition of death in preparation for a future of readjustment. The prayers of his wife and children have guaranteed him an upcoming good death, for which we are organizing his energies. At the same time, we are getting the family accustomed to remaining active on its mission of the good without his physical presence.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So it is always very important when we're studying Spiritism, no matter which book we are reading, no matter which type of discussion it is, that we do not confuse the concepts of divine justice and human justice. We had this conversation a few Sundays ago where I mentioned to all of you that human justice is based on evidence, not proof, evidence. And that divine justice, although it sees evidence, divine justice is performed or is carried out, better, is carried out based on intention or intentions. And this is a huge difference because divine justice begins the process even before there is a crime. And even if there is no, let's say, crime or misconstrued behavior. Whereas human justice is an after the fact situation. There has to be a crime, there has to be a misconduct, there has to be a misconstrued behavior for it to manifest itself. So here we see this quite clearly. Fabrizio has done a lot of things that were wrong. We studied this, the fact that he left his other 3 brothers go to financial ruin, lose their lives. He was very aggressive in his business, but at the same time, he had the good intentions towards his family. He had good intentions towards his own children. And we cannot sacrifice the children now, or the wife in particular, right? I say in particular because she's the other adult. That's why I say especially that in comparison to the children. So we cannot sacrifice the children and the wife because of his doings or his misdoings in this case. Fabrizio has to account for his actions, for his thoughts, for his speech on his own. We do not account for anybody else's thoughts, words, or actions, only of our own. This is very important because we have to address the intentions, and we are the only ones who understand the intention of our thoughts, the intention that actually precedes our thoughts, our actions, and our speech. Nobody else. So because of all of his constructive behavior towards his family, he is being given this opportunity. He has I try to be very careful with this word, but here I believe it's not so bad to say it. He has accrued a merit. He has accrued some merit or something positive for himself. These positive points are those related to how he behaved in his family. For everything that he did to his brothers, his initial family, when he constituted his own, he was not despotic. Quite the opposite. And it's because of this that he has accrued these positive points. And it's because of his treatment to his immediate family now, his wife and children, that the spirituality is coming to assist him. We all have a form of assistance or another. All of us. The worst individual on this planet, an unfinished draft of a human being, as I like to call, even that individual has assistance. But the assistance is bound to divine law, to the divine law of the intentions of cause and consequence. So the consequence of everything constructed that he did to his family is this assistance that he is receiving right now. So we should not read it with surprise that for everything that we read about him that was negative, that was destructive, that he's still having some form of assistance. But no one is saying here that because of this assistance, he is being exempted from the crimes, from the misbehavior that he performed initially. Not that. The assistance is coming in the form of not imposing extra sacrifices on the family, on his immediate surroundings, because there was at least there some form of love, some form of respect. This is what this is how we should read this. We have to separate what he did, for which he has to account for, and for what he did to his family, which is now being used in exchange for this assistance that he's receiving. I hope it's clear to everybody that the assistance is not exempting him from his past misbehaviors. Okay? All right, so right?
Julio, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
I'm a little confused.
Yes.
Okay. He did what he did with his brothers.
Okay.
Right? He hurt. And then now you're saying, or they're saying that he is still going to be helped because of his love toward his family. They're assisting him, right?
Yes.
because of it, because of his love. He still has his love for his family and the good intentions that he have toward the family. But with the brothers, I am a little confused with that.
Okay. So with his brothers,
Okay.
he did not show love. He did not show respect. He
Right.
did not show anything that was constructive. But later, when he developed his own family, he had his wife and then children. He did not show himself to them, to the last ones, as despotic, as well, criminal in a way, as he was to his own brothers and to his father, because he lied to his father.
Right.
By the time he said to his father in his deathbed, "Oh, I will take the fortune and take good care of my brothers," he was already lying. He knew about that. He may not have known all the exact ways he would go about to bring misfortune to his brothers, but he already had in his heart the idea of treachery. So, because of what he did to his family, because of this, he has accrued some positive points. He is not, let's put it this way, evil all the time. He was not destructive all the time. So in his intentions towards his family, let's say, I'm just going to throw this out there, okay? He acquired 50 points, positive points. What he did to his brothers, he acquired 200 negative points.
Okay.
We do the math. What we do is we have minus 200 plus 50, and we get the result. Still 150 negative. That is not how divine justice works. Because when we speak of points, this is exactly what we speak of evidence. And divine justice is based on intention. Divine justice will meet everything that was positive that he did to his family in one way. How? With his assistance at the hour of his death. And everything that he did destructively to his brothers and father, divine justice will actually operate there by having him make amends to each and every one of those spirits.
Okay.
How they're going to make amends is for the future.
Yeah.
But whatever he did that was destructive there is independent from everything that he's doing positive or constructively now to his family.
Okay. I understand now, Julio. I got it. Okay.
And actually, this is great because it tells us that, what we'd say,
We learn.
one right, like a right makes, makes up for two wrongs, or
Right.
we have so many different variations on it. There is no such a thing according to divine justice. To divine justice, if I treat you well, between us, there is a constructive behavior. There is always a positive interaction. If I treat somebody else now in a bad way, that does not affect our relationship, and it should not. That will affect my consequences with respect to that person that I'm mistreating right now. I will have to solve that. And this is why Christ, our master, said, before you lay down anything on the altar, go and reconcile with your brothers.
Yes.
In other words, before you come to the altar, God is not interested in getting your gifts. God is more interested in that you achieve plenitude. And to do that, you must not have destructive behaviors towards others. So if you have this, that is where you should focus your attention, not at the altar.
Yes.
Because we know that whenever we have to deal with God, we are always in our best behavior. That is Fabricio with his family. But what happened when Fabricio had his brothers and his father? What did he do then?
Mm. I guess, Julio, it's like we all grow up, right?
Yes,
He
yeah,
was
it's
he was with his brothers. Now he has his own family, and he realized what he did in the past. Surely, I understand him. Mhm.
yeah. We have here the prayers of his wife and children have guaranteed him an upcoming good death. I mean, if
Right.
death could be good or dignified or something, right?
Yeah.
This is our way of not dealing with the word death. We start putting adjectives in front of it so that we can disguise it. Death is death, period.
Right.
But the idea here is, you see, when we behave constructively towards someone, they can actually assist us in a way. So perhaps all of these prayers and their behavior towards him soften that negative side of his personality. Didn't did not change it. No one changes anyone else.
Right.
Only the person undergoing something can change
Mhm.
himself or herself. What
Yes.
is important is that the examples of those around us, especially those immediately around us, family members, okay,
Mm.
they can actually have a very, very positive influence on us and kind of show us that there is another way of doing things. We still have to make the choice of doing things one way or the other. This is why we are responsible for everything that we do, say, and think. But the family has, or the immediate friends, the colleagues at work, and so on and so forth, they have also a great impact, a great influence, positive or negative, in our lives.
Yes. Thank you, Julio. I got it.
Mhm.
I get it. Thank
And
you.
I think it's important also to stress what he said, Calderaro said about his family, right? The
Yes.
family deserves. So they are assisting him because of him, but also because of the family, because the family deserves the assistance they are providing to Fabricio, so they are not going to be disturbed by his death, by his a prolonged process of dying in the mental state that he is, that takes a toll in a family. And we all know, if you have a family member that is it's out of the ordinary and it's causing a lot of trouble, so to leave the family in peace, they are assisting him. So that's important also to stress.
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. Continue now.
Yes, please.
Okay. The assistant became quiet and prepared to perform magnetic applications on the patient's circulatory system. He administered energies around the most important arteries for several minutes before progressing to longitudinal passes meant to calm his nerves. In light of my natural surprise, Calderaro explained, "We are preparing the access to the thrombosis, to the classification of certain veins. This carnation will arrive gently in a few days as a compassionate measure, indispensable to the happiness of the patient and those who have closely followed his torment." The patient seemed to have taken a miraculous painkiller. He settled down, resting his head on the white pillows. In a moment of silence between us, I inquired curiously, "Considering his impending death, how will the redemption and liquidation of his debt proceed in the future?" "The process has already begun," the instructor replied calmly. "How so?" Calderaro made an expressive gesture and suggested, "Just wait." The
Thank you.
patient rang. Stop here?
Yes, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm.
Just wait.
Okay.
Just wait.
Wait.
Okay. So you have to understand that Brother Calderaro is not killing this man. That's the first point that we have to make here.
Mm.
This is very important because remember, a crime is a crime, whether it's in the spiritual realm or in the physical realm. And a crime against a human life, even when we take our own life, is against the natural law, against divine law. So what Brother Calderaro is doing here is speeding up a situation that is already there because of how he lived his life. Brother Calderaro is not giving him a disease or a medical condition or basically killing him one by one way or another. So when we read about all of this thrombogenesis, the formation of a thrombus or a thrombi, right? The formation of a blood clot that will eventually dislodge and occlude an important vessel, blood vessel, okay? This is something that is already in the process because of how Fabricio lived his life. This is adamant. It's not just important, it's adamant that we understand. So the condition already being there, all the circumstances for the blood clot formation being there, what Brother Calderaro is doing is speeding it up so that before he passes away, he will pass away before he will reach a situation where this guilt will consume him and take some of the energy of his family with it. Because he is, of course, being taken care by everyone. And since the family loves him, the family is probably hurting by seeing him in this condition. This is what we read previously, a few paragraphs before, that Andre Luiz called it a dignified death. Dignified here in the sense that, remember, I'm going to use here medical terms or the medical sciences. He will be seen as a schizophrenic. And if we let him continue on this path of self-destruction, spiritually speaking, he is going to look like a crazy individual, a schizophrenic, or even a person that may lose control and might even move on to mentally impaired, or not impaired, mentally unbalanced, I'm sorry, mentally unbalanced. So if his death comes a little earlier, he will be saved from that condition. This is what was called a dignified death. So Brother Calderaro is assisting in speeding up the conditions that are already in his physical body. So Andre Luiz is, remember, Andre Luiz had been a doctor in his last reincarnation here on Earth. So this goes against everything you study in medical school, right? You don't kill your patient. You actually do your best to prevent death, right? So Andre Luiz is seeing this, and Andre Luiz is seeing also a man who's done quite a lot of very destructive deeds towards his brothers and fathers. So remember that he asked, why are we here? Why are we helping someone who's so devoid or bereft of hope? Mm-hmm. And then now we're going to see why they are there. Brother Calderaro says to him, just wait a little bit. You will see that his redemption or his path towards plenitude is already being realigned here in this reincarnation. And this is what we are going to read now. Mm-hmm. If there are no questions about this part.
I think it's important here, Julio, to mention, because this is a very, we just studied suicide and we discussed euthanasia on Thursday, and I think it's very important to understand the influence of the spiritual world in the processes, and we could refer to a case that we studied in Workers of Eternal Life. I believe his name was Fabricio also, if I'm not mistaken. that the spiritual world gave him, in between quotations, an extra 6 months in life of living, because he had to help to solve some family issues that were important for him to continue to be alive. So we have to look at both sides, right? The spiritual world, the evolved spirits, the protecting spirits, they understand our needs. They understand what is important, it is not important to us. So when we discussed last Thursday euthanasia and an abbreviation of human lives by artificial means, by incarnated individuals, it is completely different from interference from the spiritual world in the cases of discarnation on both sides, either extending it or in this case, making it happen faster in a sense. As Julio pointed very well, they're not killing him. They are just speeding the process with what he already has going through. So it's important for us to make the difference between physical world and spiritual world in these cases. Otherwise, we can get confused when it's killing and when it's not killing, right? This is not killing. This is just speeding the natural process. And the other way around, in the previous book, delaying the natural process. They also didn't save I don't remember, I think it was Fabricio also. They didn't save him, they just extended his life for 6 months. Okay?
Yeah, we'll see in the next chapter the opposite behavior, actually. So we'll see that, again, it's important for us to point out that we are talking about Brother Calderaro, Andre Luiz. The intentions of these individuals are the loftiest. They're the highest one can think of, right? We're not talking about low level or spirits who have no understanding whatsoever. No, quite the opposite. So here we are seeing the abbreviation of life by using the conditions that are there, which is what Schwann was saying. Okay, he did not create those conditions for the abbreviation of life. And in the next chapter, what we're going to see is the spirituality doing the exact opposite, and trying to extend which is going to be contrary to what the person in the physical plane wants to do.
Okay. Okay. The patient rang the bell on the headboard. His wife answered right away. Finding him better, she smiled happily. Now more peaceful, the elderly man asked, Inez, can I see little Fabricio? Of course, his companion answered delicately. I'll go and get him. In a few minutes, she returned with a boy 8 years of age. He flung himself into his grandfather's skeletal arms with extreme fondness and asked, Feeling better, Grandpa? The sick man gazed at him tenderly and stated, I do feel better, my little grandson. Why didn't you come this morning? Grandma wouldn't let me. I guess that's right. I wasn't feeling well. Inez left the room to observe the scene from the other side of the curtain. Grandfather and grandson felt more at ease. Totally transfigured by the boy's presence, our nearly demented friend pleaded, My little Fabricio, I want you to pray for me. The boy didn't hesitate. He knelt down right there and reverently said the Lord's Prayer. When the prayer ended, the sick man asked with moist eyes, Dear child, don't forget to pray for me when I die. The boy, now standing, hugged his grandfather and replied, weeping discreetly, You're not going to die. Appealing, relieved, the old man responded to the affectionate gesture, gazed at his grandson and asked with a strange brilliance in his eyes, Little Fabricio, do you believe that God forgives sinners like me? The tearful and confused boy answered, Grandpa, I believe that God forgives all of us. Displaying the anxieties that populated his soul, he asks further, even a man who betrays his father's trust and steals from his brothers? The grandson hesitated, incapable of understanding the full extent of that intentional question. But wishing to please the patient any way he could, he uttered with complete childlike simplicity, I think God always forgives. That's what I wanted to know, stressed the elderly man, more relieved. The affectionate and pleasant conversation continued between them.
Thank you.
After a deep examination,
Oh,
Cadolaro.
thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay.
Okay, so it's not much in this part of this excerpt of the text. It's just a tender scene between the Fabricius, grandson and grandfather. They both share the same name, same first name, okay, same Christian name. So little Fabricio, okay, is a little boy, and his grandpa are talking, and what we see here is actually a disguised attempt at asking for forgiveness. The child, the representation of innocence, the representation of the absence of malice, the representation of everything that is as close as possible to pure in this world, is symbolic. Of course, the child is there, is right in front. Little Fabricio is right in front of his grandfather. But what this scene has a lot of symbolism. The child is, in a way, a representation of the divine. Remember the words of the master, whatever you do to these little ones, you do it unto me, right? In the sense of taking the child or taking children as the closest thing possible on this earth, on the physical plane, that represents, that symbolizes, that stands for simplicity, innocence, absence of malice. So the child here is also symbolic. And you see Fabricio grandfather asking the child questions the child would never be able to answer. If we think of a child, for instance, for just 1 second, if we think that we do not have a spirit, that life on earth is it, how is it possible for grandfather Fabricio to ask the child such adult-like questions? This is not about the forgiveness or not. It's when he speaks of his crimes towards his brothers, and towards his own father. The child, Fabricio grandchild, cannot answer or give any answer that will be meaningful, not at this age. And even if for one particular moment we think now as a spiritist, and we see the child with a spirit that has lived many other lives, a mature spirit in some ways, not the spirit necessarily as innocent as a child, even if for that very brief moment we could consider that spirit will not come through at that particular moment to answer those questions. So the scene is symbolic. He is looking at the child because perhaps there's pride or there is such an overwhelming amount of guilt in him that he cannot even address the Creator itself, or Christ for that matter. So he addresses a child. In a way, if you were there observing the scene, you would be thinking, why is he, Fabricio grandfather, putting so much burden on this child by asking such complex adult-like questions? You would think that there's no way, and the answer, and the child, I'm sorry, Fabricio, the grandchild, can actually become very perturbed by these questions, or at least in a bit of disconcerted, let's say. These are questions of adult life.
Right.
So there's a lot of symbolism in this scene. This is what is important that we focus. He has to unburden himself, Fabrizio, the grandfather. And he's doing this not to God directly, not to the Creator directly, not even to Christ. Perhaps because of his overwhelmed guilt. I don't know. The text does not tells us that. But there has to be guilt from everything that we have read. Now, whether it's the guilt or whether there is still pride, he does not want to admit to someone as omnipotent or as overwhelmingly superior to what he is. Perhaps he doesn't want to do one of that. Whether it's pride or guilt, we don't know. So he addresses it to the child because the child, as I said, is symbolizing that purity, that innocence, that complete absence of malice. Is the closest thing to the Creator on earth. And to him, the closest thing to the Creator on earth that will not brush against pride or guilt, his pride or his guilt.
Elmo raised his hand. Elmo.
Yeah, go ahead, Elmo.
Yeah, hi, Julia. And I think the parallel and to the very important concept of forgiveness that you bring on the introduction to forgiveness, I see also the necessity for confession to take this thing out of his throat. And of course, you would pick someone to confess who is incapable of censure, who is free of prejudices, and would not be judgmental.
Yes, very good point. It's that what we say, we have to say it out loud. Until we say it out loud, we cannot start the healing process because it means we have not admitted it to ourselves deep down. That's exactly the confession. This is why, in this case, he's doing it to the grandchild. Yes, good point, Elmo.
I think you have more to say, Elmo? You raise your hand again, or was it?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The hand was there again, so I asked. Okay.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, so that I can continue.
Okay. Okay.
After a deep examination.
Okay. After a deep examination, Calderaro nodded toward the child and explained, "This boy is Fabricio's former father. He has returned to the family of his criminal son through the blessed gates of reincarnation. He is his only grandson, and later he will assume control of the material inheritance of the family, the property that was his in the first place. The Lord never sleeps." Astonished by this information, I mulled the questions that surfaced spontaneously. How would old Fabricio redeem himself? Would he too return in the future to that very home? Would his imbalance continue after the death of the dense body? Would he remain for long in a disturbed state? Ending our work of assistance in this home, Calderaro smiled, prepared to leave, and answered, with the residues of his criminal actions in his mind, right after abandoning his physiological domicile, our sick friend will experience the results of his failure for a long time. This will continue up to the point where suffering will finally remove the malignant elements that poison his soul. Once this purgatorial work is complete, then will he return to his family? I anxiously inquired before he could finish. If the current blood-related group raises its spiritual standard to a higher level of illumination, he will have to make an intensive effort to join them. Meanwhile, he will never be without support. We are all part of a huge family, of which we've been members from the very beginning, humankind. We left the spacious room. In a few seconds, we had returned to nature, enjoying the blessing of a clear blue sky. And while my instructor took refuge within himself, attended to the responsibilities of his work, I gave expansion to new thoughts related to the breadth and greatness of God's justice.
Thank you, Sarayda.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here we see how the repairs or how the amends are on the way. We have little Fabrizio being actually a reincarnation of old Fabrizio's father. In other words, Fabrizio's father reincarnated as his grandson. The best proof of the concept that we have, that we can come back, that we that we can have what is called atavism, that we can skip a generation and come back. So he skipped a generation in the sense that he could not be his own son, of course, but he could be his son's son or the grandchild. So little Fabrizio is the reincarnation of the betrayed father, old Fabrizio's father, and he's already there in the home, beginning the repairs, beginning the amends, making amends. It's in this particular part of the text we have some hints. They are not conclusive. We have to be very careful. So when Andre Luiz begins to ask Brother Calderaro if now when old Fabrizio dies, if he can come back to the same family, and Brother Calderaro is very careful to say, well, he has to cleanse himself first. So Brother Calderaro is actually hinting at two things. We are not given the protagonists. We are not being told who is doing what, but he's hinting at the fact that Fabrizio's father, the old man who was betrayed, that died at the very beginning of this chapter, okay, perhaps does not hold as big a grudge as Fabrizio's brothers, because he's already in the family. There must be in him already some form of reconciliation going on, or at least the intention towards reconciliation. But then Brother Calderaro is very careful when he says, if the current blood-related group raises its spiritual standard to a high level of illumination, in other words, it means that right now it's not that high level. If he has to raise, it's because it's not there. You do not put up a house or a barn that is already standing on its own, right? So in this case, if he has to do it, or they have to do it, and he's probably referring to the other brothers, because that is all we have from this chapter. It gives the impression, like I said, it's a hint. It's not explicitly there. It's a hint that perhaps the brothers are not in such good terms with Fabrizio as Fabrizio's father is. So when Fabrizio goes back to the spiritual realm, there's a lot of cleansing to do. There's a lot of growing up, maturing, spiritually speaking, to do before he can entertain the possibility of coming back to the same familial nucleus. We have to be very careful not to see in the little Fabrizio as the reincarnation of Fabrizio's father, not to see this as something that happens willy-nilly. It's not like that. Oh, if I'm now in my family, I'm going to come back later on as like someone's child, and so I'm going to be my grandchild or my granddaughter. It's not as immediate, and not like that. It all depends on how we behave towards those in the family. Sometimes if we look at the extremes of the spectrum, when the amount of hatred is so huge, we actually come back. And you might ask, why is that? You already hate these individuals and you're coming back because there are so many unsolved issues between you and the others that you have to be there, because you cannot focus anywhere else. Even if you were to reincarnate in another family, your mind would be dragged back to those issues the whole time. You would not have a peace of mind. And the worst part, you won't even know, because you're away from them. Because I just said, in this example, you are reincarnated in another family. You will have all of these feelings inside of you. So your mind will always be consumed by them, and you will not be able to address them, because those that you could address them with are not around you. So you come back to a family where that hatred is still very strong. The same thing when you love someone so much, when there's a lot of bonding, spiritual bonding, you can come back because one assists the other. One assists the other. So these are the extremes of the spectrum. But all the shades of gray in the middle show us that there are gradations. And sometimes we may have a little respite, and we can go to another family, to another familial nucleus, and then come back, or another or 2 or 3 families later, we come back to. So we have to be very careful not to read in this particular example and take this example as a norm, as something that always happens. And this is why Brother Caldorado was specifically careful to answer Andre Luiz's question about, oh, is he coming back? Well, wait a second here. He can come back. It is possible for him to come back. There is no obstruction, but he has to do his homework first. He has to cleanse himself. He has to mature spiritually before we may consider reintroducing him into this familial nucleus. Okay.
I think there's a very important sentence here. We are all part of a huge family, of which we've been members from the very beginning, humankind. So in the end, everyone is our family, and we are reincarnating according to our necessities and their necessities that are close to us.
We can learn everywhere.
Exactly.
Everywhere. The same way we say we learn in the spiritual realm and the physical realm, even when we consider just the physical realm, it means we can learn in any family we go to, or any nucleus we go to.
In the book, Voltei, I came back from Brother Jacob. He's there in the spiritual world trying to readjust himself to relearn and everything. And he's sent to a college type institution in the spiritual world for a couple of years in a place where he knew nobody, because the mentors told him, it's important for you to stay amongst those that you have no relationships at all, so you can focus on learning without being influenced by what's around you. So even isolation from loved or hated ones is important for certain periods of time. Okay.
Just one thing, be very careful not to think that we have to isolate. What João is saying here is very important. We can have a little, it's like a little break where we can grow, mature spiritually, so we can come back. And this is especially important when there's a lot of pending issues like hatred okay? So this does not mean, do not read it from upside down, okay? Do not read that, oh, family is a perturbation or family member are an encumberment to our spiritual growth. No, they're not. They are actually the opposite of that. They are the stepping stones. They are actually those who really train us to improve ourselves. But sometimes when the problems are too many, we have to take ourselves outside of that environment to be able to focus our mind and pick one problem at a time to deal with. And this is what is happening to Brother Jacob in I Came Back. That's Ron was mentioning. So don't read the family. There's a great movement today saying that we are all here, not necessarily in spiritism. Okay, it's a movement against the family, and we have to be very careful. The family is still the best school that we have, the best school, and we all need it. Some form of family or another. Okay, it doesn't have to be the traditional family, but we need that conviviality in that living together, that immediate association to some individuals, because they are the ones who are really training us towards plenitude.
Oh,
Well, if you have no questions, we're going to start chapter 13. We're gonna go from schizophrenia-like to psychosis-like.
Psychosis, okay. Affective psychosis. I went with Calderado in the middle of the night to assist a distressed sister on the verge of suicide. We entered a comfortable, albeit modest, home and noticed the presence of several unfortunate spirits. The assistant seemed like he was in a hurry. He didn't stop to make any comments. I followed him to a humble room where we found a young woman weeping convulsively, overcome by immeasurable despair. Her mind displayed an extreme imbalance that has spread to all the vital centers of her physiological makeup. Poor thing, said the instructor, very touched. Divine kindness will not fail her. She has gotten everything ready in order to escape through suicide tonight. However, divine powers will help us to intervene. He placed his right hand on the weeping sister's forehead and explained, this is Antonia, a selfless, struggling sister. She lost her father at an early age, and when she turned 8, she began doing paid work to support her mother and her little sister. She spent her childhood and adolescence enduring enormous sacrifices, not knowing what the joys of being a girl and a teenager were like. At 20, she lost her mother, snatched away by death. Despite her own dreams of happiness, she was forced to sacrifice herself on behalf of her sister, who was about to get married. Once the wedding was over, Antonia tried to distance herself to take care of her own life, but she soon discovered that her sister's husband was given to terrible behavior. Absorbed in pleasures of the lowest order, he got drunk every day, returning late at night and hitting everything in sight while hurling insults. Our dedicated friend felt sorry for her sister's fate and stayed home with her in silent selflessness to relieve her burden and help her raise her children. The years went by, sad and slow, when Antonia met a certain young man in need of support so that he could continue his studies. They identified each other through age and similarity of ideas and sentiments. Devoted and noble, she became a young man's selfless sister. His company shed a blessed light on her endless nights of loneliness and sacrifice somehow. Splitting her time and abilities between her sister, her 4 small nephews, and the object of her dreams, she enthusiastically devoted herself to redemptive work each day, awaiting the future. She imagined that someday sh- she too would receive the crown of motherhood in an unpretentious home, one that was good enough for her, for the happiness of two souls forever united before God. Nevertheless, after graduating, Gustavo, the young man who had benefited from her loving cooperation for 7 years, felt that he was too important to share his destiny with the humble girl. Independent and holding a university degree, he didn't think that Antonia was the companion he envisioned for himself, physically speaking. Having big plans for his social life, flaunting a medical degree, and feeling the urgent need to start a family, he married a young woman who owned a huge fortune, scorning the the loyal soul who had helped him during uncertain times. Deeply humiliated, our unhappy sister went to visit him, but was received with mocking coldness. With repulsive presumption, Gustavo harshly broke the news to her. He needed to organize his business interests and had therefore chosen a more suitable spouse. Furthermore, he stated that his position required a wife who didn't come from an environment of lowly activities. He wanted someone who wasn't employed at a laboratory, who didn't have callous hands or strains of gray hair. The young woman listened to all this in tears without reacting. Since returning home yesterday, she has been harboring a desire to die no matter what. She feels that her hopes had vanished, crushed by the unexpected blow, that her life has been reduced to cinders and dust, and that selflessness opens the doors to ruin and death. She got hold of an amount of a deadly substance and plans to swallow it tonight. Pausing in his explanation, Calderaro suggested, examine, examine her while I administer first aid.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great, Soraya. Thank you, and sorry it was so long.
It's okay, it's okay.
Okay?
Okay.
But you see, this first part here is setting the tone for our chapter. It's difficult to break because the point here is not to be is not to spend too much time on her vicissitudes, on her difficulties in life, but to understand that she has been an individual who is the exemplification of what the medieval Catholicism misappropriated and misconstrued terribly, I might add, as altruism. This selfless devotion to others to the expense of one's own life. And the first thing that is important for us to understand, we are not judging and saying that what she did was wrong. It's not that. But the most important thing for us to understand is that we have to be very careful with the concept of altruism. This idea that you can give everything to others at the expense of yourself is, in a way, very detrimental to us. Of course, we get a lot of positive points by assisting others. But remember when I spoke of the intentions? What are our intentions when we do all of this to others and we do not do anything to improve ourselves in the process? We all come to this life, with the exception of one or two that we can perhaps fit in one handful, okay, of fingers. With the exception of one or another, we all come to this plane of existence because we have pending issues for ourselves, things that we still have to focus on, to improve upon, things that we have to learn. And if we have this misguided altruistic behavior of just assisting others and others and others and never looking at ourselves, yes, we do something that is constructive. Yes, we do something that is positive, charitable even, but we ourselves do not solve those pending issues that we had to begin with. Those same issues that actually prompted our reincarnation process, our current reincarnation process. We labor in great error when we believe that if we forget about ourselves and we only dedicate ourselves to others, we labor in grave error when we believe that by doing so, by forgetting about ourselves and only dedicating ourselves to others, we are going to be in the kingdom of heaven. This is not it. This is not it. Remember when the young man approached our Master Jesus Christ and said, Master, I would like to follow you. And the Master turned to him, and then he asked the Master, what should I do? And the Master turned to the young man and said, part away from everything you have and come with me. And the young man did not go, because the young man was a man of means. He had some assets and he could not relinquish that. What Jesus meant was not for the young man to give away his assets, his fortune, but to not allow those to be more important than the path that he was going to take. We should never allow charity, love for others, assistance towards others to be more important than ourselves, because in the end, much like that young man who had to learn detachment, we also have to learn the things that we have yet to learn, that is still pending for us. That young man, even if he had given everything in terms of coins to everybody, he would not have learned the detachment. He would be following the Master with his mind always back into the fort about the fortune he had just lost. The cost of following the Master. So when we have this particular altruistic behavior, we have to be very careful not to use the altruistic behavior as an excuse for not addressing the pending issues in our own lives. In psychology, this is called a scapegoating mechanism. We do other things to deviate, to take our attention away from the real immediate problem. We escape the immediate problem, the problem that we are ready to solve, capable of solving. We are capable of solving at that moment in our spiritual journey, but now we postigate, we put it off by doing other things. Okay, other things are being constructive. Great. I'm not putting that down, but it's very important that we see that each one of us is here in this world, on this plane of existence, to address pending issues, to learn, not just to teach. This is very important. Perhaps one who teaches a lot still has a lot of problem with honesty and is just masking it, dressing it up. So we see this sister, Antonina. She looks like a model of selflessness, right? It's an individual who has devoted herself to the life of others. First, she lost her father, then she devoted herself to mother and sister. Then after that, she loses her mother when she was already 20. Then she devotes herself to her nephews and nieces, and even to her sister, because the husband, the sister's husband, actually, the sister's husband is a drunkard, is most likely a physical abuser, from the little that we read about. Okay, so she's there acting as a buffer. Amazing performance, amazing amazingly selfless on her part. She should be congratulated, okay? But what has this brought to her? She has forgotten about herself this whole time. To make matters worse, to add, the icing on the cake, she gets entangled or involved, it's a better way to say, involved with a man, Gustavo, and she assists this man financially, from what we gather here, not just financially, probably also, morally, in terms of motivational speech, everything. She assists this man to achieve an education, to obtain a degree, and the moment he gets a degree, he gives himself airs of importance, deserving or not. That's not the case. What is important is that he puts her down. He sees now her as being beneath his category, his point in life, his standing, in life. And he, in this case, dumps her, as we say in a regular parlance. He simply brushes her aside as if she were a piece of lint, with not so much as a thank you for all the assistance, financial including, that she gave him. So she is an individual who is always looking after others. But in this process, she does it at the expense of herself. She does not own herself. She does not own her own life. And this is taking a toll. She is mounting one disappointment after another. She's gathering them. In colloquial language, we would say she's a glutton for punishment. She's a glutton for punishment. But she chooses to be. She could do all of that and still be a woman holding her own, owning herself. It would not change the difficult moments, the loss of the father, then the loss of the mother, then the loss of a loved one, the abusive husband her sister has, all of that, or the difficult moments that she might have with the nieces and nephews and everything. Owning oneself does not change what happens to us in life, but it changes our perspective, how we see these issues in life, and what we do to cope with them or not. She has amassed so many disappointments that look at the consequence. She is now planning to commit suicide. And this is not a sexist text. We are not talking about a woman who's, just because I've been dumped, I'm going to kill myself. No, you see that she has actually purchased a substance to commit the act. Okay? We are not just talking frivolously. No, we have an individual who is at the verge of committing the most egregious crime against divine law. We have to be very, very careful here. You might say, why a woman, not a man? Well, because usually it's the woman that have this, it's more common, let's say, for women to have this form of taking care of, especially of familial matters, which is what we are seeing here. She is the one holding families together. She was the one holding her own family together when she had father, sister, and mother. And later on, when it was her sister's family, she's the one. And when she tried to do her own, she also missed the opportunity because of Gustavo's behavior. So we see here an individual that does not need our prejudice or our bias or our judgmental attitude, but an individual who needs our help. But our help, not in just patting her on the back and saying, you're so good, you do all that. No, but our help in the sense of teaching her how to take care of herself before she can take care of others. Think of the airplane situation. You put your mask on and then you assist the next person. Because if you pass out while you're trying to assist the other person, you both die. So it's the same thing in life, especially when we speak of spiritual progress. She needs someone to teach her without being judgmental. She needs someone to teach her how to take care of herself. Conditions in her life we don't have the details. This is very important. Conditions in her life must have been such that one problem came after another on the heels of another so quickly, she never had the time to decompress and see everything from an external perspective. She just had to deal with one problem after another. There are individuals in life who are like that. They are so bombarded by one problem after another. Like I said, one problem comes at the heel of another so quickly, they do not have enough time to pull themselves out of that situation and see it from a brighter, bigger perspective, because they have to solve it. These are very, very complicated problems that need immediate attention, if possible, solution. So this may have been the reason why she has had this life. And we have individuals around us who are like that, and we have to be very sensitive to them. And sometimes if we are true friends of these individuals, whether we have a family tie or not, but there's a friendship, a spiritual friendship towards this individual, a fraternal love towards this individual, we should assist them to have this more external perspective, because they may actually end up piling up so many disappointments that they might find themselves in Antonina's shoes, thinking of departing from this life, abbreviating the reincarnation process. Any questions?
Yes, Julio. Phil,
Right?
I don't remember all the names, but if we look at this situation and Alcione, I know they have a different basis. Can you give us a differentiation between these two situations, why they're different? And
in what sense you speak of Alcione?
Alcione was the dedication of a spirit who came back, was advised that it was a treacherous idea for her to come back and support someone when she had moved on. And this person, being a person who's dedicating themselves also to someone else, many others maybe, I'm trying to understand what differentiates the two. Okay, so here is why I was I had this idea in mind to be, I was trying to be very careful to say that there are exceptions, because we should always be very careful with sentences that have never or always, right? We should never say things like that. We should always be cautious. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Right. Okay. So when we see individuals who are like Alcione, when we're discussing the story of Alcione, right? Now I understand what you meant. There is probably a completely different preparation for that spirit. That is a spirit that already comes prepared, has prepared herself to undergo such devotional behavior towards others. We have individuals, for instance, that do not marry and have lots of adopted children, or that dedicate their lives to charitable institutions or causes, and they themselves have no family. They even sacrifice a little bit time with friends. It's not that they don't have friends. They sacrifice time with friends. They don't have a barbecue together. They don't go to birthday parties or this or that. But these individuals are still happy. They are
psychologically functional in the sense that they are well structured, psychologically speaking. And why is that? Because their preparation is different. They see the difficulties in life, but they have already some evolution, moral and intellectual, spiritually speaking, that allows them to cope with these disappointments and see them in a different light. They still suffer. They may cry at times. Don't get me wrong. It's not that they are insensitive. No, they feel it, but they recover faster, and the wounds do not run deep. They don't even leave a scar. We are seeing here in Antonina's case, as in most of us, when we have this type of selfless devotion to others in an altruistic, misguided way, that the person just stumbling in life. Life is actually running over that person. The person doesn't own her own life. And in this situation, the disappointments not only pile up, but they actually leave deep wounds. It's not just a scar, it's a deep wound that eventually bleeds too much, too quickly. So it's all in the preparation of the spirit. Selflessness in itself is not, let's say, the altruistic behavior by excellence is not something we should frown upon, but we should watch when we see someone near us with this and ask ourselves if that person is still psychologically viable, if that person, in being so selfless, in being so altruistic, is not self-destructing. Because if the person is not an evolved spirit, the actions may be beautiful. The actions may even move us to tears. But the next set of tears will be shed at that person's funeral, because we will see individuals leading themselves to a form of suicide or another. Antonina is the telltale sign. She has purchased a poison. She intends to drink it. But there are other ways of committing suicide when we devote ourselves with this selflessness that is not very mature, that may lead the individual to a form of suicide by simply exhaustion of one's own vital fluids before one's own time, and before one has the opportunity to solve or at least address some of the pending issues in his or her own life. So that the difference is in the growth, in the moral growth, in the intellectual growth of the spirit, how much that spirit has to reach that. Our master is the example of selflessness, of absolute altruism. Is the altruism par excellence. It's the top. Nothing can beat that. Not on this level that we are. Perhaps in other levels where there are other Christs, yes. But he never, we have no circumstance where he was angry, where he was discontent with the world, where he was enraged, or where he blasphemed about to God or about humanity. No, he took everything in his stride. And why? Because he had a growth, a moral and intellectual growth as a spirit that was above all the problems that we could actually throw at him.
I understand. My reason for the question was to understand whether, and I don't remember exactly, I read the book several years ago, whether Alcione had any negative impacts from that experience. And I don't know if
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember either, because it's been many, many years.
Yeah.
And I don't think collectively speaking, that the idea that there were negative impact. There must have been, because she was not a perfected spirit yet. There must have been, but they must have been outnumbered by everything positive that she gathered for herself. Because the idea in that book was to show, not to show this selflessness behavior in its best, was not to combat it.
Yeah, but I don't remember any discussion of any negative impact on the person. That's why
I don't recall. Yeah, I like I said, memory is a tricky thing, but I don't recall anything that would come to mind very quickly or that would jump at someone's eyes when they read, because I think that the whole idea there was to show the positive aspect of a charitable life, a life lived in the name of charity.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
And love for one other spirit, right? She came from a different world. She was already in a more evolved planet, and she chose to reincarnate here out of love for an individual that she wanted to help, knowing that it was going to be a miserable life, and she came anyway. So, you know, it's really a much more evolved spirit. Spirit is already in a more evolved planet.
Yeah, and there's always the perception, right? Because, for instance, a spirit of the level of Alcione, when she faces a difficult moment in life, we may say, "Oh my God, poor person, so and so," right? Because we see it from our perspective, how we would have behaved or felt in that situation. But that individual is now so above that. Still sees it as an obstruction, as a little impediment, as an obstacle, but, you know, has a different approach. It's a much lighter approach to that problem. Okay, so it's also about perception. So if we were looking at her life and writing the book, we would probably have or write about negative concepts, but for her there weren't. Like I said, as far as I can remember.
I'll let you know when I get there.
Okay, thank you. But we can definitely see the negative impacts on Antonina's life, right?
Yes.
No one would consider, no one here in our sane mind would say that suicide is a constructive approach.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I think we should. I think we have to stop here. I think it's a good part to stop also, because now we know the gist of the chapter. We know her life. We know what we are going to be dealing with. Basically, we're trying to rescue someone from the brink of suicide, from the brink of the abyss. That's the whole point. But that, we'll see you in September to continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Julio. Yes, we have a couple of announcements, right? Tomorrow we are starting a new meeting called Spiritual Assistance Meeting through Zoom, through the same method that we're using for our study groups. It's a meeting, a virtual meeting for those that used to attend our spiritual treatment sessions at SGNY on Mondays, or even if you never attended, but if you want to join us. It will be a 30-minute session from 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'll start with the reading of the book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, followed by a quick comment, and then we finish with a prayer meditation. It's not a study class, it's not a lecture, it's just really a meeting for those that wish to get together, to pray, to vibrate in a positive ambient. The meeting takes place at the same time that we are having our mediumship meeting at SGNY, that we went back to have the meeting. So it will be conducted by those that are not attending our mediumship meeting but are part of the group: Aloysio, Fabio, Anna, Zoraida. So you are all invited to join us. It's every Monday from 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay? You should receive the email tomorrow morning with the information again. You should have received it on Friday. So this coming Sunday, second Sunday of the month, we'll be studying the Gospel according to Spiritism that we did last week, but we'll continue. And we will have our Q&A session following this class here. So after the closing prayer, for those that want to stay and want to continue discussions, we'll have our Q&A that we have every first Sunday of the month. Okay? So I'm going to invite Carol to do our final prayer. If you can. Carol.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Julio. Thank you, John. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we are truly grateful to be together today, to receive the information, the studies, and the energetic uplift for our studies of In the Greater World. We are truly grateful. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the mentors, the directors, the teachers who are helping us to understand these concepts and principles in a greater way, in depth, putting into practice each day as we are able to do so. We are truly grateful to be together at this time, and may we continue to share these blessings with others as we are able to do so through our discernment. We give thanks for what we have received today, and may we put into practice our faith, our hope, our charity, and especially our altruism, but an altruism in a balanced way. We must also be good to ourselves as well as a balance in sharing with others. Let us be reminded of this each day, to take stock of ourselves, to be on the path, to be in the guidance of the higher principles of Spiritism. May we be blessed in doing so, and may we continue to receive this grace. As we close this meeting today, we humbly ask for safety and protection for those who are on their way, for those who are going to be returning to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we be blessed, and may we receive an extra gift of strength, safety, and protection during this time, and may we have this blessing be extended to our families as well. We close this portion of the meeting now, and we humbly ask to receive the love and light of peace within our hearts and within our minds, the blessings of Christ, the light and the bringer of hope and peace. We close now and go forth as beacons of light. Go forth now in peace, so be it.